The BBC's Question Time had a fairly in-depth discussion of the cuts to the benefit system that are coming up in the near future. Let's have a listen and see if we can comment as we go along.
Let's hear from Karen. Karen MacDonald. Where are you sitting? Right at the back, yeah.
If the proposed benefit cuts are supposed to get people back to work, how do you genuinely ensure that genuinely unwell people are not going to be impoverished?
So we understand that there is going to be a green paper from the Work and Pension Secretary, possibly next week. There's been lots of reports about cuts to the welfare budget, possibly of as much as £5 to £6 billion. That's certainly what the BBC has been reporting. And Keir Starmer has talked on more than one occasion about how there is a moral duty where people can work, they should work. Yeah. So, Faiza, the incapacity and disability benefits cost last year almost £65 billion, which is more than 3 government departments put together. Do you agree that there should be cuts to the welfare bill?
I don't agree. I don't agree with directly cutting people's money. And, it's really striking, isn't it, the last few weeks? There's always money for war, but not for the poor. And here we are. Yeah. OK, there's people, disability benefits. My own mum, I saw her go through this and the cuts under the Tories, right? She had heart failure. Did she want heart failure? Absolutely not. She was in her mid-50s. They came, they harassed her. It was absolutely heartbreaking to see. And anyone that knows someone that's been through that, you'll know the lack of dignity. And underlying this, and I'm so upset and shocked to see this come from a Labour government, is an idea that somehow people that are struggling, people that are on benefits are all cheating.
This is a good point. There may be denials coming up further in the debate, but let's have a listen to what some other people have said.
It's about tightening up the eligibility, stopping people from gaming the system.
I've no doubt, as there always have been, are people who shouldn't be on those benefits, who are taking the mickey, and that is not good enough. We have to end that.
That's just not the case. That's just not the case. That's the implication for always going for this group of people. And honestly, there is so many better ideas on which to raise money, more money. The richest in this country, the ultra-rich, have got so much richer in recent years, even during COVID, actually especially during COVID. And if we just took just a small percentage of those with over 10 million in wealth, which is something most of us couldn't imagine, and put a 2% tax on that, that could raise £24 billion a year.
She's right. This claim is based on estimates from the UK Wealth Tax Commission, which analysed the potential revenue from different forms of wealth taxation. A one-off wealth tax of 2% on individuals with more than 10 million was projected to raise around £80 billion over 5 years, which averages at £16 billion per year. But if it were an annual tax, some estimates suggest it could raise more, closer to £24 billion per year, depending on compliance rates, asset valuation and avoidance strategies.
Faiza, let me ask you that. Faiza, so you're an economist, so obviously you are well versed in this, so you will know better than I do that there are many countries that have introduced wealth taxes and that have abandoned them because either they haven't worked or because they have brought in so little money. So what makes you think that the United Kingdom can do something that so many other countries have failed to do when it comes to raising revenue?
But we always focus on the failures. There's also countries that have done well with their wealth taxes and countries that are introducing them right now, so Spain,
usually
Norway.
as a one-off tax for 1 year only.
It's a really good question. So I worked with governments around the world, actually, that were looking at this. And one thing they did was that they were very clear about what the money was going to be used for. They spoke about it in terms of solidarity. And so the public was really behind it. And so the rich knew that there wasn't really much they could do to argue against it. We're at a time when we want to increase defence spending, when we want to improve services, when we're dealing with the climate crisis. This is a really key moment to say, do you know what? The richest have got so much richer in this country. You can put in a bit more at this point because there's so much we need to sort out in this country. There's so much we need to do to make sure the next generation has a better life. I'm genuinely really worried for my 1-year-old's future. You say this about people moving abroad. Some of my colleagues at London School of Economics went and spoke to rich people. And do you know what they said? They said, oh, yeah, I do say that, but I actually did move to Geneva for a while and I came back because I love the opera in London and my kids are at this private school and what have you. It's not just money. There's other things that are involved as well. So we might lose a couple of rich people, but in general, actually, people do stick around.
While it is true that some wealthy individuals would likely leave or shift their assets, Whether it would be enough to significantly reduce the revenue from a wealth tax is uncertain. If it's implemented carefully, it could still raise substantial funds without causing a mass exodus. It is also true that several countries have introduced and later abandoned wealth taxes due to lower than expected revenue, high administrative costs, and avoidance issues. However, some countries still have wealth taxes that generate significant revenue. France generated 5 billion euros per year. Wealthy individuals like Gérard Depardieu left, and the tax encouraged avoidance strategies rather than real revenue collection, and that's why it was replaced with a narrow property wealth tax. Sweden made £4 billion in UK terms, but many Swedes moved assets abroad. The tax was seen as discouraging investment, so it was abolished to boost economic growth. The Netherlands, Denmark, Austria, Ireland and Finland all scrapped wealth taxes due to administrative costs and avoidance. But Switzerland makes £25 billion in UK terms, and it works well due to strict enforcement and low rates. Norway has made £37 billion in UK terms. It generates significant revenue, but some rich individuals have moved abroad. And Spain generated £1.2 billion per year. Some wealthy individuals avoid it by structuring their assets differently. So, would a UK wealth tax work? Well, it depends on how it's designed. If the UK set a low rate, for example 1 to 2%, focused on high net worth individuals and closed loopholes, it could generate significant revenue, similar to Switzerland or Norway. However, if poorly designed, it could face the same fate as France or Sweden.
That couple of rich people, the study showed 11,000 people, because of the Labour non-dom budget, 11,000 millionaires have left. That's the equivalent of 500,000 average taxpayers. And you have to remember that the top 1% pay 1/3 of the income tax. So if these people do leave, and they can leave because the world is a small place to them, that is repercussions, which is why we saw Rachel Reeves at Davos say she's going to make changes to her non-dom policy. Now, there's an argument over why she listens to them, not farmers and anyone else. But fundamentally, we want people to be wealthy, to bring more wealth in, to be able to fund the NHS side.
I really want to come back on this.
The only other country that's lost more millionaires in the world is China. And so we're seeing that happen right before our eyes because of the consequences of the...
So non-doms, or non-domiciled residents, are generally foreign nationals, although some are UK citizens who've claimed non-dom status based on family connections to another country. They live in the UK but claim their permanent home is abroad. They only pay UK tax on UK income and foreign income if they bring it into the UK. And many wealthy individuals use this status to avoid UK taxes on overseas wealth. If they're already paying very little UK tax, their departure might not have a major impact. But some non-doms own businesses, invest in property and spend heavily in the UK, so their exit could reduce some economic activity. Many non-doms also have dual citizenship or long-term ties to the UK, meaning they may not leave easily. So, while some non-doms might leave, many are deeply invested in the UK economy and might just adapt to the new tax rules rather than leave entirely.
Why should we reward bad behaviour? Non-doms are not paying those tax as they should. And so you're saying because some of them are thinking about leaving, and be careful about this because rich people often say they're going to leave and then they don't.
But they have left. They've left.
Well, they're putting their tax somewhere else before the new rules.
Well, they might as well have left.
That's different, right? And so this is a future-forward policy, and others could make the argument for why this needs to change. But what I want to go back to is that there is a choice. You have to make political choices. So can we leave disabled people alone and look to the richest and say, do more, right? That's a political choice.
All right. Constantine,
well, there's much sense in what you're saying on other things. And look, obviously the story with your mother is something that's familiar to other people, and it's shocking. The reality of this is that there are basically three buckets of people that the sickness, long-term sickness deals with. You've got people like your mother, you just need the help, they're not going to be able to work. And that's what it is. And they need all the help that we can give them. There's the other group of people who are effectively in a position where they've had some kind of temporary setback in their life. They may not feel well enough to work just now. And what happens to way too many of those people is they get trapped in the system. And one of the reasons is that there are situations for many, many people where it makes no sense for you to go back to work because you're going to actually have less money at the end of it. So we've got to end that because we're leaving millions of people at this point on the scrap heap and doing that. Then also there is a much smaller group of people who are just taking advantage of the system, and we've got to get better at filtering them out as well. So,
for clarity, the fraud rate in the disability benefit system is 0.0%. There is absolutely nobody gaming the system in the disability benefits.
Yes, it's very important. We're very clear about who belongs in which bucket. But we cannot leave millions of, including many, many hundreds of thousands of very young people on the scrap heap with no chance to get back into work. And very often it's not because they can't, it's because we don't give them the help they need, because it's easier. Take your money and shut up. That's what we do with them. Instead of giving them CBT, all sorts of job skills, training, etc. That's where we should be putting the money.
That costs more money, though, so that wouldn't lower the budget.
I'm not saying we should lower the budget necessarily.
Yeah.
What we should be doing is getting people back into work, because when people are working, they pay taxes, and then we make more money. And that's what we really should be focusing on.
The fear, of course, is that people will be targeted who are not able to work, who have progressive conditions that are never going to get better, and they are going to be forced to seek work, to take this help that will not do them any good, and then eventually be forced off the benefit when they don't succeed in finding any work that can take them. That is the big problem. If people can actually find work, it's going to be when their illness ends or work that will accommodate their disability. I don't think the government has actually done any research into whether companies are willing to take on disabled people and make adjustments to accommodate them.
Our social security bill is very, very high, and if we leave it as it is, it will hit about £70 billion by the end of this decade. That is too high.
Why is it too high? If people fit the criteria for receiving the benefit, if they've got disabilities, if they've got illnesses, then they should receive the money. The question is not about bringing the bill down by excluding people from being paid. The issue is about bringing it down by making sure that people don't need it. But that's not an issue that's being even addressed at the moment. The problem is that people are becoming sick, that people are becoming disabled. So the answer is address that.
So we need to make sure that we are giving people the support they need to get back into work. Our employment rates are too low. We need to get young people into the workforce. We need to help people. We've already launched 8 pilots, helping young people back into work and also trying to integrate NHS care and the help that you get through DWP.
Because I'm old enough to have worked on the programmes and to looked at the programmes that happened under New Labour last time round, which were actually a lot of money went into this New Deal for workers. But what they found, and the evidence was very clear, that it needs a lot of support, expensive support, tailored support. And when it does work, when more people go back into work, it's because there's more jobs available to people. And there's a contradiction here in Labour policy when you're putting a tax on employers and national insurance, making it harder for them to employ people. That's what the evidence showed for the Labour programmes the last time round. Let's look at the evidence.
It's hard to argue with that, isn't it? The simple fact is the jobs aren't available, and if they were, then employers would take people who are able-bodied because there are plenty of them and they don't need the adaptations.
But what really distresses me is when we start talking about it and the first thing that comes out is personal independence payments. Personal independence payments are for people with disabilities who may be able to work or may not. Actually, whether they can work or not is not part of the equation in terms of personal independence payments, because all that happens when we talk about this is we cause the anxiety and distress for disabled people that the gentleman here described.
This is absolutely correct. PIP is an in-work benefit. You can have it whether you are unable to work or working in a job. So targeting people on PIP as being work shy is a complete fallacy.
Actually, in terms of the economy, we need the economy to be growing. And the Labour government says that that is their priority.
It is.
But Well, I'm really sorry, Emma, but a lot of the things that you're doing are not going to help with that. If we look at the national insurance contribution increases that employers are facing, just last week in Parliament, Liberal Democrat peers brought forward an amendment to that bill that ensures that social care and health providers will not have to pay those increases. That's going to come back to the Commons next week, and I'm pretty sure that the Labour government are going to vote it down again. So we're not going to actually support healthcare to help people back into work. And if the economy isn't growing, there's not the jobs for people to go into.
Again, this is accurate. If there aren't the jobs to go into, then there is no point in throwing people off benefit. You're just going to starve them out, basically. That's the end of that. I hope you benefited from it. If you did, please like, comment and subscribe, and you will hear me in the next one.